Hi everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to show up to something like this. I know it isn't easy. My name is Julia, and I'm here to introduce Cheri Anderson, and she is a local holistic health coach. And her specialty is specifically around biomechanics and mindful movement. I'm really excited about the topic she has for us today. It should be really good. So without further ado, Cheri.
Thank you. Hi everyone. We've been playing with the tech, so I'm just going to turn this on and just test it really quick. Is that better? Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so I am super excited to be here. I want to tell you a story about the decision I had to make to buy some type of transportation. My dad rode motorcycles when I was growing up, and when I was thinking about buying a new vehicle, I thought commuting around downtown Portland would be better and easier on a motorcycle. So I called my parents and I asked for their feedback about what it would be like if I bought a motorcycle, and they didn't say no, don't do it. I mean, not that they're going to tell me what to do, but you just want people with experience to help you make good decisions for yourself sometimes. And so I bought a motorcycle, and it was before I had my motorcycle license. I had ridden a motorcycle as a driver for the very first time during my motorcycle training course. So in the training course, I think it's like a weekend, maybe it was 2 weekends, I forget what it is right now, but they were concerned and said, you are doing a great job, but maybe a scooter is a really good option for you. I was so apprehensive and nervous because the bike is so heavy and I'm so small, and I just wasn't confident with it. And so I decided I could do this, and they passed me anyway. After buying the motorcycle and getting my license, it was finally like the time to go pick my bike up from the lot. And I made sure to look extra cute that day because I had these pictures in my head of what a girl on a motorcycle cruising around downtown Portland would be like. And I wanted to be super cute when I drove off the lot. So that's what I did. I met up with the guy who sold me the bike. He befriended me. He knew I was nervous to start driving amongst traffic, like real cars, not in the parking lot where you practice. And he was like, I promise we will get you super confident. We're going to go through Northwest Portland from like Lovejoy downtown all the way up to Cornell into the hills, the West Hills, because they're super windy roads, and by the time you get through all those, you will be super confident. You will have mastered riding your bike with traffic. I didn't know any different, so I trusted him, and that's what we did. So about 2 miles on our road trip, it's 7 o'clock at night. It's at the end of rush hour traffic. People are coming home into the West Hills, and he's riding ahead of me on the same bike. Notices that there's a line of cars backed up behind us because we're going a very speedy 30 miles an hour. And he gets nervous for me because he knows I'm nervous. So he signals, pull over. There's 2 tunnels. After the second tunnel, there's this huge gravel shoulder on the ground. And so we pull over onto that shoulder. And as I'm pulling over, I step my foot down, and gravel is loose rock. So I didn't know that I needed to be aware of this. So I put my foot down, my boot slips, and I start to tip over. My first instinct was grip harder with my left hand because I was falling to the right, but that doesn't make any sense in physics, but that wasn't what I was thinking. So as I'm failing to pull the bike off my body, I literally put my right hand out to brace my fall, and I drop on the ground. The bike fell on my legs, but it's a light bike. It did not hurt me. So that was a good part of the story. But my right arm is like tingling and numb, and I know something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. So I'm laying there, and I realize this is my first motorcycle accident. This is the thing that everyone warns you about. Like, it's not about if you'll get in an accident, it's about when. So I'm embarrassed because now, like, I just fell and I injured myself, although I don't know what my injury is yet. And my friend Danny pulls the bike off of me. I bend my knees and I realize I can't sit up without some type of extreme pain. And I started thinking to myself of the different voices of people who spoke to me. Whose voices do you think I heard first?
Get a scooter.
Right, like, it was my mom and my dad. And what do you think they said to me, like the echo of what I heard? Yeah, get a scooter. What else do you think I might have heard?
Don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. I told you so. And those were some of the thoughts, but one of the ones I was not expecting was, make sure you wear clean underwear before you get out of the house in case you get in an accident. So that's what I was thinking about my very first day being a new motorcyclist. Those were the words that came to my mind when I hurt my body. My name is Cheri and I am here today to talk to you about the power of words and how they affect our body. I believe, as a holistic wellness coach, that we as a human being have three parts of our existence. We have our body, we have a soul. I have kind of come to an agreement with the idea that our soul is made up of our thoughts, our feelings, and our will. So how we act or behave, how we feel, and how we think. And then we also have our spirit, and the spirit is mysterious. We all have different ideas or thoughts about that, but for me, I like to connect it to, it's kind of where we can own an identity of who we are. And I started thinking about, as a coach, how this idea of who we are holistically, spirit, soul, and body, affect us, both in our personal and professional lives. And one of the key moments something shifted for me in my professional career was while I was here at Nike coaching. So in the past 7 or 8 years, I've been here as a strategic wellness, or a strategic coach, and work on team building and vision and leadership training. And I would sit in these meetings with the executives, and they would be like, here are my deliverables, here's my problems, my challenges, my struggles, my constraints, and we would work on accomplishing the goals that they needed to have, like, how do I decrease the turnover on my team? And so as we would go through all these conversations, as a side note, I would hear them say things like, I had a panic attack last night. I went home and yelled at my kids. All this anger just spilled out of me, and I feel awful because I wasn't actually mad at my kids. I don't sleep well, I have insomnia. So I kept hearing all this feedback about the body. And the reason I think it stuck out to me was I also had a ton of feedback from my body that I didn't know how to resolve. So trying things with my diet, trying things with fitness and exercise, meditation, none of it was giving me a result where I could feel better from the inside out. And that's when I discovered something called holistic biomechanics. So I started studying that and applying it as a practice with my coaching clients. And this is where a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today comes into play. And I'm excited because we're going to try some fun things and hopefully give you some insights that will shift how you relate to your body differently moving forward. In the idea of being who we are, that idea of holistic spirit, soul, and body, I want to compare it for a moment to design. If you think about design and function, so if you think about an old-fashioned watch, it has 12 time markers on it. It has a minute hand, a second hand, a body, and then inside the watch are the mechanics, the cogs and the wheels. The person who designed the watch originally, or anyone who therefore after does, has to be meticulous and perfect in the design of that creation. Any millimeter off and it will either disrupt or malfunction in its purpose to tell us time. So then the watch will be rendered useless. So there is a creator that specifically designed a thing to have a function and a purpose that serves us. So our bodies have a very specific design, function, and purpose. And that's what we're going to explore a little bit. And we just, like on the macro level, we talked about the spirit, soul, and body, but we're going to get a little more specific. So one of the specific, unique, and universal designs as a human being is that we use words to communicate and speak. We're the only species that does this. I mean, all species have some type of communication, but we use words. Our words represent and reflect our physiology. Our physiology is a state of our emotional and mental self within our body. So our body reflects what we think and how we feel and also how we behave. A lot of times we've heard like you are what you eat, but the way our body is designed, we are also exactly what we think and exactly what we feel. There's this thing that I use as a common phrase in just the lessons that I have with clients, but we have patterns of movement, so motor patterns. So everybody has like a way when you come to a room and you sit down, we have a habit, a habitual pattern. So that might mean like you cross your left leg over your right, you might sit with your fingers crossed, you might, some people when they stand, I've seen a lot of men do this, golfers in common, I just don't notice they like to stand like this. But we have physical patterns of movement that are innate or just like common side. They're so subconscious and unconscious that we don't ever notice them or think about them. But they come from somewhere. So where do they come from and what do they mean? So if that's natural and if it's happening constantly, what are the things that are actually determining our reality? And we're gonna do a few activities coming up. I want to lay a little bit more foundation of these things. So in thinking of the fact that we use language as a universal and unique part of our design and function as humans, we're going to focus on words. The words we say. And the reason I brought up motor patterns is because the words we say aren't always things that we say out loud. We have our own inner voice, right? In our head, we're always talking to ourselves or we hear our own thoughts. And so even if we're not saying something out loud, we might be thinking things. And every thought that you have is literally a physical pattern of movement in your body. So if I say, I am hungry, so my physiology will change, like whatever my adrenaline level is, my blood pressure, something will change in my structure. I'm not going to know it, but physiologically that's what's happening. Same thing with what I think. If I think I am ready for winter, whatever that might be. If I talk about how I feel, I am sad, I am depressed, I am happy, whatever those descriptor words are, that is a physiological state, and I'm going to show you what that looks like as we move forward. So those physical motor patterns are reflected through our thoughts, our feelings, our words, and in our body. And what's fun to think about is boundaries. So I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the word boundaries. Boundaries define our limits. Like having skin is a boundary so none of my organs spill out of my body. That's a very unique, specific boundary. Boundaries protect us. Boundaries will limit us, but limitations aren't always bad. They can be good things. Boundaries also protect others. And in a macro sense of boundaries, let's think about some of the things we may have heard that help define how we actually live in society. So one of the things I think about when I think of just macro level boundaries is how much food do you eat? So like I'm going to sit down, I need to have a boundary on how much sugar I consume or how many calories I consume. If I'm going to go out with friends and be social, I'm going to have a limit on alcohol. How much alcohol should I consume? If you have children, you might think about boundaries as far as like you're only allowed to play on your iPad, video games, watch TV for so much time. So there's a lot of different types of boundaries. How much time should I work or study versus be social? How much sleep do I need? There's boundaries around relationships, your sexuality, romance, intimacy. There's boundaries around work, how many hours you work, how you interact with your colleagues. So there's all of these boundaries around us all the time. But what happens when we overreach our boundaries? If we're out of bounds with ourselves, there's the consequences, right? We have to pay the price for those consequences. So to go back to that idea of some of the things we just listed, overeating, physical discomfort, weight gain, or worse. Over drinking, hangovers at best, alcohol poisoning, bad decisions that you made and may or may not be able to reconcile later, or worse. You can overwork, which means there's probably a compromise in your personal values and your priorities, right? And then with your body, so if you have any level of athleticism, either at present or in your past, you can overwork your body with exercise. So you can fatigue sooner, you can injure yourself. So when we don't honor our boundaries, we have consequences, right? This is one of the roots that begets, I think, this mindfulness series that you guys are having the fortune of participating in on campus. And we had the mindfulness launch campaign last week because we want to encourage everyone to have greater levels of self-care, to not have so many out of balance experiences on a day-to-day basis. So we know better because we're all educated adults, right? We know, like, if I drink too much, it's not going to be a good thing for me. If I work too much, if I don't sleep enough. So, like, we know, like, there's a lot of shoulds. But if we don't honor what we think we know, why do we keep doing it? Why do we keep putting ourselves where we're suffering the consequences of a lack of boundaries? Why is it so hard to find time or to find the mindset to have a daily experience, not even like a part of your day, but just why is it so hard for us to experience peace of mind, being present in the moment, and having the boundaries that both honor us and honor those around us? It's hard because the way we're conditioned to function with our nervous system. So how that plays out with our culture is super interesting. During that mindfulness campaign last week when I was here, I just attended as a guest, I heard someone on stage say, you know, it's super important at Nike that we figure out how this works because all of us have to have coping strategies for stress. Coping strategies for stress stuck out to me. How do you have coping strategies for stress? How do you can't control the fact that there's more work to do than time that you have. You don't control that there's more to do than you have the energy for. So what are the coping strategies? What if you could be present in the moment, understand what your body is saying to you, and then function at a higher level? And what would it take to redefine what that looks like? So we're going to try some of that stuff together. There is a partner activity I want to ask you guys to do. So if you guys wouldn't mind, just two people side by side, any two people, we're going to do a partner activity where your hands will be touching. So you can sit, or I think actually standing would be better for this, if you guys don't mind participating with me. Does anyone not have a partner? Okay, so we have one person. Justin, will you be her partner?
Sure.
This is my friend Justin, he's my tech guy. Okay, so we've been talking about boundaries. I gave you some examples. There are other examples that we have in our day-to-day that help us live in society, like rules that we've heard: say please and thank you, knock before you enter, stay out of that room, that's off limits. There are so many different phrases that we've heard: look both ways before you cross the street. Those boundaries protect us, right? And so how do we begin to connect how boundaries affect our bodies? And that's what we're going to practice. So if you put your hands palm up, so your hands will be touching, think about the heel of your hand, and think about the ball of your hand. So the ball are the knuckles right here, and then the heel is between the thumb and the pinky right above the wrist. This is a talking exercise, so I'm going to tell you the instructions, and then I'm going to give you some time to experience it. You're going to take turns. So the exercises, you're going to decide who goes first, and you're going to ask any question that the other person has to answer yes or no to. So if I said, will you take one step backwards to my partner? They can say yes or no. Doesn't mean you actually have to do the activity if you come up with an activity question. And you can say yes or no in a different tone. You can be like, yes! Or you can be like, yeah. You can say no, like, no, how dare you? You can do variations like, of course, I would be happy to do that for you. So you don't have to be limited to the words yes or no, but experiment with yes and no in different tones and different variations. The person who's not talking is going to pay attention, or you can both try to do this. You're going to notice if the heel of the hand and the ball of the hand pull away from your partner. So when you say yes or no, or when they ask you a question, you're just going to notice if the contact pressure on this part of your hand changes at all. It might be subtle, it might be strong, it depends on the question, depends on how you respond. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so now you've had some chance to familiarize with your partner, and you guys can decide who wants to go first. So you're just going to ask a couple of yes or no questions, take turns, give yourself time to experiment with different variations and tones. So, does anyone want to share what they experienced, or if anyone noticed any changes in the hands?
They just got hot.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The room would pull away on the nose and lean in on the yeses.
Mm-hmm.
We found that we couldn't get a significant result until we started trying to lie. Like emphatic lying and hand pulled away.
Interesting.
Like even pronouns lying, like we talked about, you don't like running, and so we primed it. You're going to say that you love running, like that's going to be the next thing you say, and the hand pull away. So primed, known, planned lying.
It was a very expressive reaction versus a subtle one.
The more emphatic the yes or no is the push, and then the less certain answer was pull away.
Okay, so I'm going to read this to you just so I say it clearly, and some of you are taking notes, and if you want to take notes, this will be something that you could write down, and I could also share it with you later. So, our body, each body part has a specific relationship to our environment. So our hands relate to boundaries. The heel of the hand is the ability to support weight moving towards your body. So if I'm pushing something, if something is coming towards me, it's the heel of the hand that helps support that. If you do not have a lot of heel of the hand pressure, so pressure or force within the body in that area, it's representative that you don't have good boundaries if someone is encroaching upon you. If I don't have the heel of the hand bones prominent, then I will allow when others get close to me, I will cave in. So when the heel of the hand loses pressure, we're caving in a little. The ball of the hand, so these guys right here, is the ability to support weight as weight is being moved away from the body. If we do not have good ball of the hand pressure, we don't have good boundaries when we approach other people. So if I don't have the ball of the hand bones prominent when others are leaving me or moving away from me, it is difficult for me to be independent on my own without collapsing. And these are very subtle things, just like if I say a thought is a motor pattern, and it changes your physiology, you might not necessarily notice your heart rate changes, but it changes. But you can begin to sense your body and begin to pick up on, are the bones in my hand more towards the surface of the palm or more pulled into the tissue? And different parts are way easier to sense than others, and the hand is a fairly easy one. If you were to just do you can even put your hands on a wall and you can feel the pressure that each of the 4 finger bones and your thumb bone have. You'll notice which ones are more or less resting on the wall, and that will tell you, okay, are some areas of my boundaries that correlate. The thumb side of your hand is for external boundaries I set with others. The pinky side of your hand is internal boundaries I set for myself. So that's another thing. If you put your hand on a wall, you can sense where that connection is stronger or weaker, and that might help create some self-reflection on boundaries and how your body is talking to you, because your hands get to illustrate that for you. I'm going to talk about a visual side of this in a big picture way next. The boundaries that I'm describing in our physiology comes out when we have triggers. So part of our design and function, right, is our nervous system. We have a parasympathetic nervous system, which is called, in layman's terms, like we refer to it as rest and digest. And then there's the sympathetic, which is fight or flight. Has anyone not heard the phrase fight or flight as a easy buzz phrase? Okay, no hands are raised, so we've all heard of fight or flight. Has anyone ever used that to describe how they feel when they're stressed out? Raise your hand. A few people. Okay, so when we say that we're fight or flight, there's actually multiple stages of what that looks like in our body, and I'm going to show that to you. Okay. This is an illustration of the 6 stages of fight or flight. The guy who drew these pictures, I think he was very fond of the medieval time period, but they are accurate descriptions or depictions of our body when we are in these different stages. So I'm going to describe a few of them in brief. The first stage is being startled. So his anatomy is fairly standard. When you get startled, you put your hand up, like you hear a loud sound, like what was that? You know, you kind of jump a little. Not too many changes in your structure. The second picture is fight. One hand, sometimes 2, will come up in a fist, and that fist can be soft or firm. The pelvis and the organs around the pelvis start to narrow if you look at the organs in fight versus startle. The chin comes down. The third picture is flee. So we say like fight or flight, flee. That's scoliosis, is a flee pattern in the spine. We start to turn, the mouth opens, our neck changes position, lots of physiological changes in the flee pattern. The next pattern is freeze. In freeze, the head goes back, your brain becomes more parallel to the wall behind you than to the ceiling. Your knees start to lock. Your organs are super narrow. Your spine starts to go more into the body versus to the back of your body tube, if you will. And the last 2 stages are stage 1 and 2 of being collapsed. There's 7 stages total, and the last stage that's not depicted on this photo is rigor, which is like you're really rigid like a corpse, but you're not dead, but you have that same rigidity in your body. So in the different stages of collapse, your organs lose their tone and function. They start to become more and more dysfunctional. Your knees are locked in collapse 1. Your knees are bent to match the curvature of your body on the top. In the stage 5 and 6 of collapse, your shoulders go really close to your spine and your arms start to go behind you. A lot of times people with really fairly fit bodies but maybe have a bigger belly or abdomen, it could be because your lumbar spine is more inverted or your pelvis is rotated more forward. So our structure reflects what we think and what we feel. So people usually in 4, 5, and 6 will describe similar behaviors or thought patterns, like I have a lot of anxiety, I have a lot of depression, I don't feel rested. So there's patterns that go pretty universally with each of the stages. when we do something like what we just practiced with our hands, we're sensing. We're sensing to notice, we didn't do the specific because it takes a little time and we only have an hour, but you can sense, and you can do this by yourself at home on the wall or on your desk when you're working. You can put your hand down and you can sense what part of the heel of my hand is prominently touching whatever surface. What part of the finger bones in the ball of my hand are prominently touching. And just by beginning to sense, literally, where is my body, my structure at in space, just pick one thing, not your whole hand, but just maybe the ball or the heel to start with. As you begin to sense that, your brain has to go out of fight or flight and become parasympathetic. So literally by sensing for just 60 seconds, 90 seconds, you start to train your nervous system to be less fight or flight, so you can be more dominant in fight or flight or more dominant in parasympathetic rest and digest. So if we have super high stress environments, whether it's at work or at home or otherwise, maybe traffic is like the worst part of the day for some people, how do you put yourself in that situation every day but also become more parasympathetic? One way you can do that is when you're not in a high stress environment, maybe when you're waking up or before you go to bed, or if you're out in nature doing a run or a walk, you take a break and you sense something, because you'll have more information that comes to your mind cognitively when you're parasympathetic. And then as you're in stressful situations and you're being triggered to be fight or flight, then you can just be like, you can be in a meeting with maybe something that's difficult, or you're reading an email that triggers you. Just there's lots of different things that happen throughout the day. You can literally just put your hand on the desk and sense where are the bones in my hand, which bones are lifting away and which ones aren't. The answer doesn't matter, but the fact that you're activating your brain to ask the question, because then it's drawing your attention to your body, and that's how you practice being more self-aware. That's how you practice giving yourself greater self-care, because as your boundaries in the moment become clear, as your awareness of where your body is at in space in the moment become clear, you start to make decisions that adapt to that moment better. The other version of that, when we're not doing it that way, is we have the stories we tell ourselves in our head. So one of the patterns, especially stage 6, the people in stage 6 often live not in reality, but in the story of their own reality that they create. I have had times in my life where my structure has gotten super collapsed. Like, I would never have saw that picture and been like, oh, look at that's me. I so identify with that. But with every person who has the eyes trained to see structure, like, are my scapulas that close to my spine? They were that close to my spine. Is my tailbone more behind my hamstrings or more in between my legs? I think about a dog when it tucks its tail when it's in trouble. I had no idea where my tailbone was, but it definitely was not behind my legs where it would be in a parasympathetic state. So I started noticing I have a lot of these patterns where my thoughts and my words and the stories I told myself or others match the stage 6 of being collapsed. And when I started putting these pieces together, it made me realize if I want to change, it's not going to be my diet, it's not going to be meditating more, it's not going to be self-care where I'm like, I should go to the spa or I should take a walk. Though those things might be nice, they're not going to literally change the patterns. If I go to my chiropractor, he can adjust my body, but I have a dominant pattern, a dominant motor pattern that keeps putting my body in that same situation or very similar to it. So what is it going to take for my body to change and get out of that state? And it's these little moments throughout the day. Literally, it can be 60 seconds to 2 minutes of you just sensing your structure. And I just gave you one example today with the hands, and that's enough to start. And you practice that, and the more you practice that, it literally is like anything else. You have an inventory of, if we use our words, and we're going to do one more exercise. Just want to check on our time. I don't see the time.
Oh, like 15 minutes?
Okay, yeah, we'll have some time. Perfect. So we're going to do a word exercise, but those words, if we don't know what the stories are in our head, just like we might not subconsciously or unconsciously know, like, oh, every time I sit down and I cross my hands, like, you never think about it, you don't know that you do it. Same thing, what are the stories? I didn't know the stories I had in my head at stage 6, but one of the coaches that I have was like, well, you use a lot of grandiose language. Everything for you is a big dream. Everything is a big picture. Everything is one day you will accomplish changing the world. So I was like, well, that's good, right? No, because what are you doing today? Disassociating from reality. I mean, she didn't say it that bluntly to me, but over time, that's what I was able to come to the conclusion of all by myself, right? So she just kind of laid the foundation for me to start seeing it and not freak out more. Because these patterns, right, we don't want to see them about ourselves, but the reason we have them isn't a bad thing. We use stress in our culture as like a bad word, like, oh, I'm so stressed out. But stress is genuinely and naturally a part of our human experience. We're never not going to have stress. If we were born 1,000 years ago, we had different types of stressors than we have today. And 1,000 years from now, there will be different stressors that we have today. Stress is part of why or how we live, and just how do our bodies, which have a specific purpose, a design, and a function, adapt to all of that. And it's distracting because we're not ever taught, what is my structure doing in this moment? What is my body telling me? We're taught to sit down, to say please and thank you, to go back to all those phrases, how to live in society. But what if our environment isn't helping us survive to be our best selves, but it's helping us just to adapt to an environment that's only triggering us to go into survival mode versus to thrive, to live, to be fully ourselves. And we have to be self-aware to do that. So this next exercise, if you have your phone, you can use it. If you have a pen and paper, we're just going to write some words down. And I'm going to be quiet for a little while because I'm going to give you like a good 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how fast everyone writes. But we're going to write words. So the unconscious things that I was just talking about, those motor patterns, in our body are also in our head, our stories. So sometimes it's hard to say, what is a story? I would never have known to have grandiose thinking. I would have just thought I'm an awesome dreamer. Until my coach was like, that's a stage 6 pattern. I'm like, okay. Take your word for it and then see what happens next. And she was right. So the stories we have in our head are easy to track by thinking about the words we say frequently. And they could be neutral. It doesn't have to be positive or negative. You could have some of us, like I have a client that's always like, right? No way! Or you're killing me, right? Like there are all these general phrases that we just are common for us. I personally am like, that was really hard. That was really hard. Like whatever I'm trying to do, like I was an aerial dancer. I was like, that was really hard. But that type of phrase happened all over the place, not just in things that were generally novel and difficult for the first time. So I'm going to give you some time. See if you can write 25 words or phrases that are common to you in your day-to-day thought process. And just another angle to add to helping you think through some of these things. It could be rules that you've heard, like sit up straight. Maybe you tell yourself that if you've been ever on a team for sports. maybe you always heard like pull your belly in or tuck your tail or point your toes. So you might not think that you think them, but there might be phrases you've heard that you also say to yourself. So that could be other ways to think of thoughts that you might come up with.
Just use that for the next 10 minutes.
We have about 1 more minute for you guys, so keep writing. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to take a break from that. The goal, if you have some time, if you want to come back to this exercise, would be to write 50 down, which if we had more time together right now, we could do that. But the first 25 we write are typically like the things that are pretty easy. The next 25, you have to really dig deeper to like think of maybe the things that are more in your unconscious, or maybe you could ask other people to tell you what are some of the things that you hear me say a lot. Just like I had a coach tell me, you use a lot of language that's big picture oriented, dreamer oriented, which doesn't really reflect well for you to be in the moment. So sometimes other people notice our patterns when we don't see them ourselves. So that's one activity that you guys can do to start recognizing what are my patterns. And for me, like I was showing you in here, got small. But that's the stage 6, right? That one particular one. Stage 4, for example, freeze, is interesting to talk about just for a moment because a lot of us have hiding patterns. Our rib cage is where we hide things. It's a cage, it protects, right? And a lot of thoughts and feelings get stored there, trapped there, and different ways. But in freeze, if that's the stage that our body is at, it's an in-between, right? It goes like 4 goes down from freeze to flee and then fight and startle, or up to collapse and rigor. Meditation is really helpful because it can slow down your bowel system. So if you're someone who has a lot of adrenaline and cortisol running through your body all the time, and you're not quite in the collapse stage, maybe you're in freeze, having your bowel system slow down will be really, really productive for you. A bowel system is a pumping system inside your body that regulates your temperature, your blood pressure. It does a lot of different things. It pumps fluids from head to toe and from toe to head. And so you need that to be functioning optimally and efficiently all the time. And when that doesn't happen, it compromises the structural integrity of your body. So when we meditate, and if we're in stage 4, it's really helpful because it helps self-regulate. But if we're in stage 5 or 6 and our bowel system slows down, in that stage, you're already going really, really slow. Like your energy is super low, your thoughts are really focused on singular things and what you need to do to get through whatever it might be next. And so meditating in a higher stage is not necessarily productive for you. So it's not about like the activity. I'm just using that as an example because meditation is something that's important and helpful, but it's also, if you're not sensory, like we were talking about with the hand and knowing where your body's at in the moment, it's not, whatever activity you do is not necessarily helpful. So you can be a runner. If you run with your hands and fists, you're automatically triggering your body to be in fight. If your hands are more relaxed, and you'll notice these things, like after I bring them up, you might notice like you're listening to something and like your right hand starts to turn into a fist because something's uncomfortable around you and you're unsure, right? That's that fight pattern, and you'll start to sense these little things in your body. So starting to recognize, what is my body doing? What is it telling me in the moment? And then all you have to do is begin to sense. So where is my hand? Where are the bones in my hand? What is my structure? Like you might recognize your shoulder blades go like this, right? Like there are really simple things, but you don't have to know that you're in stage 4 to be like, well, I guess I'm going to meditate now. Like I have to know, like if I'm not in stage 4, I shouldn't do it. It's not about knowing what stage you're in. It's also not about knowing like, is my tailbone behind my legs or in between my legs? It's about letting your brain ask the question. Just like being present with somebody is not only giving them your undivided attention, but also being aware of yourself in the moment. Because maybe you need to say something, maybe you need to get up and walk away, maybe you're hungry, so you need to hang out, pause the conversation, and go get some food. Like there are a lot of things our body is telling us that we dismiss or ignore. So being present with somebody is not just listening or giving undivided attention, not being on your phone, not thinking about work, but sensing your own structure. And just that in and of itself begins to shift you out of whatever stage you're in, which it doesn't matter, into a parasympathetic state, which is what we want to build more and more, and that happens through being sensory. There's a proverb from the Bible that I really like. I think it's 18:21, and it says, "The tongue has the power of life and death." I think a lot of us have heard that, and it might be even in other types of proverbs, but I always think about that, like how does the tongue have the power of life and death? And this is one of the ways, because what we think, whether or not we say it, or what we say is a representation of our physiology. So if I'm saying all the time, man, you're killing me, right? Like I'm speaking death versus speaking life, which is I am listening, I am distracted. Like you're aware of what's happening in the moment, whether or not you say it, and I'm going to make a choice now based on this information that's very clear to me. So having that self-awareness and clarity gives you the power to choose. And then if you want to ignore your boundary, but you're acknowledging like, hey, I should have gone and got something to eat, but I didn't, so like you acknowledge it and you're aware of it versus just this pattern that you live within, and that's just how I am, this is just how my life is. So I just want to give you that encouragement that you have the power through through your tongue, through your thoughts, to one, know what it is your body is telling you, and two, how to sense and shift it into a way that takes you to a place where you're present and able to give yourself the self-care you need to have in the moment. Yeah, so I guess the last thing that I just was thinking about that story where when I ended up dislocating my ulna, that's what happened in my motorcycle accident, you know, like falling over when I'm stopping. That idea of make sure you wear clean underwear before you leave the house in case you get in an accident. Like I don't know where that phrase came from, and then it made me like so self-conscious. Like, is it automatic protocol? Like when you get in underwear, you have to take your pants off or something. And I panicked. I was like, did I wear underwear? Did I really clean? Like it was just so random that those were the words that were there for me in a moment of need. And it's just our words are with us all the time, for better or for worse. And sometimes they're funny. And I encourage you, think about the power of life and death that you have to practice your own self-care and serving others too, because, you know, friends don't let friends, you know, speak death over themselves too. And so we can catch each other and support each other